If you've ever believed that genius can come from the most unexpected places, then listen closely. Because what happened in the penthouse of Orion Tech shocked every billionaire in the country. And if you want more stories that expose the powerful, uplift the unseen, and twist your heart in every direction, hit subscribe right now, because this one will stay with you long after it ends. The story begins on the top floor of Orion Tech's glass headquarters, where 47-year-old CEO Alexander Grant, one of the most feared and admired tech minds in America, stood surrounded by a crisis that could destroy the company he spent 25 years building, a crisis so enormous it had already shaved billions off the stock price, sent investors into hysteria, and left his entire engineering division working around the clock for weeks without finding a solution, while the media circled like vultures predicting the catastrophic fall of Orion Tech. What no one in that building knew, however, was that the person who would solve the impossible problem, a quantum link algorithm failure threatening to collapse the company's newest flagship infrastructure, was not a world-class engineer, not a highly paid consultant, not even an intern from the elite universities Alexander normally hired from, but rather the quiet, observant, 16-year-old daughter of the company Maid, a girl named Layla who had grown up mostly in the shadows of wealthy families, ignored by the powerful except when they needed someone invisible. Yet destiny has a way of bending toward the brilliant, and Layla's mind burned brighter than anyone had ever given her room to prove. Layla's mother, Evelyn, had worked for the Grant family for nearly 10 years, cleaning their estate and occasionally assisting in the corporate tower during high-pressure weeks, and though Evelyn was humble, soft-spoken, and always careful to stay invisible, as the wealthy preferred, her daughter was different, curious, sharp, unusually perceptive, the kind of girl who took apart old radios from thrift shops and rebuilt them into functioning Bluetooth speakers, the kind who read quantum physics blogs on cracked secondhand phones, who memorized equations for fun, who often paused during cleaning shifts to stare at the giant screens displaying Orion Tech code streams, absorbing patterns like other kids absorbed song lyrics. On the day everything changed, Evelyn had no choice but to bring Layla to work because the neighbor who usually watched her had an emergency. Layla promised her mother she'd stay in the supply room, stay out of sight, stay quiet, yet fate doesn't listen to rules, and brilliance doesn't sit quietly forever. While Evelyn scrubbed conference tables and emptied waste bins on the 57th floor, executives rushed about with agitation, whispering in panic about the catastrophic system failure spreading through Orion Tech's Quantum Link project, a project rumored to be worth $1 billion in government and commercial contracts. Alexander barked orders like a general in a losing war. Though his normally icy composure showed cracks of desperation, it had been 31 hours without sleep, and his top engineers had reached a dead end. Through an open door, Layla heard words that made her freeze. Algorithm collapse, packet bleed, recursive feedback corruption, terms she had read about late at night in online physics forums. Naturally, curiosity tugged her forward, though she knew she shouldn't be anywhere near the main engineering hub, but the chaos made it easy for her to slip in unnoticed. She stood in a corner, eyes scanning the massive screen covered in code, thousands of lines dancing like frantic ants, where exhausted engineers argued with each other, fingers trembling over keyboards. And that's when she saw it. A recursive loop choking the system not because it was broken, but because two sub-functions were interpreting variables differently in micro-time, something she had once seen in a simulation on a free-to-use physics engine online. Her heart pounded as she realized the solution was simple to her but invisible to minds trained to overcomplicate everything, an elegant fix hidden in plain sight. She whispered the solution under her breath, almost afraid of herself, and for a moment she tried to walk away, leave it alone, stay invisible like she promised her mother, but the building vibrated with panic, and something inside her refused to let so many people drown in a problem she could solve. Meanwhile, Alexander overheard voices of angry board members calling his personal phone, demanding answers, threatening to remove him from leadership if he didn't fix the crisis before sunrise. He felt powerless for the first time in years, a man who built an empire but might watch it burn. It was then, as he stormed into the engineering hub, that he noticed a small figure standing still in the far corner, a girl, her clothes simple, her expression strangely calm amid chaos. "Who are you?" he demanded sharply, startling the engineers, who turned to see the intruder. Layla froze, but her voice somehow emerged. "I think I know what's wrong with your system." Every person in the room stared at her as if she were a ghost that spoke. A junior engineer stepped forward aggressively, saying, "This is not a place for staff kids, security." But Alexander raised a hand, something in Layla's eyes stopping him cold. It was not arrogance, not fear, but clarity. He asked her slowly, "What do you think is wrong?" She pointed at the screen, walked forward hesitantly, and in a single breath explained the micro-time variable conflict causing a recursive crash. She spoke quickly but precisely, describing how a single temporal alignment shift paired with a recalibrated decay function could end the entire meltdown within seconds. The engineers gaped, some offended, some confused, some intrigued, and one senior engineer laughed in disbelief. Even if that was theoretically possible, implementing a live time temporal shift requires rewriting. Layla cut him off gently. It doesn't. You only need to isolate the decay function into a ghost thread and reroute the packet bleed through a cleaned micropath before the loop regenerates. It takes 3 lines. 3 lines. Alexander stared at her the way a man stares at a lightning strike. For a long moment, no one moved, until Alexander said, "Show me." He stepped aside from the console, shocking everyone, and Layla approached the keyboard with trembling fingers. She typed quickly, hands steady despite her racing heartbeat, entering 3 lines of code that seemed almost too simple, until the system froze, blinked, recalibrated, and the entire error stream vanished. The room erupted. Gasps, shouts, disbelief, stunned silence. Alexander leaned forward, jaw slack, as data normalized across the board, stabilizing at a rate his team had failed to achieve in weeks. A billion-dollar disaster, undone in seconds by a maid's daughter. Someone whispered, "That's impossible," another muttered, "Who is she?" Evelyn burst into the room then, panicked after noticing her daughter missing, horrified when she saw her standing at the CEO's console. She immediately apologized, begging them not to fire her, tears welling in her eyes, but Alexander raised a hand gently, not in anger, but reverence. "Ma'am," he said, "your daughter just saved this company." And then something nobody expected happened. Alexander, one of the most powerful CEOs in the country, turned toward the teenage girl who had just changed everything and did the unthinkable. He applauded, slowly at first, then louder, until the entire room joined him. Lila's cheeks flushed. Her mother sobbed, and for the first time in the building's history, applause echoed not for an executive, not for an engineer, not for a billionaire, but for a girl no one had ever bothered to see. Minutes later, Alexander pulled Layla and Evelyn into his private office. He sat across from them, eyes intense but warm, and made a declaration that would alter their lives forever. He offered Layla a full scholarship to any school she wanted, offered Evelyn a promotion and lifetime financial security, and offered Layla, right there on the spot, a paid position as a junior researcher at Orion Tech once she completed her schooling. But that was only the beginning. News of the maid's daughter genius spread across the building, then across the city, then across the nation, as leaks from employees surfaced online describing how a black teenage girl had solved a billion-dollar quantum crisis in seconds, stunning the corporate world. Some people praised her, others doubted her, while the media hounded the Grant family with questions. But Alexander didn't hide her. He did the opposite. He brought her on stage during Oriontech's emergency press conference. With cameras rolling, reporters shouting, and millions watching live, Alexander pointed to Layla and said, "This young woman is the most brilliant mind I've encountered in my career. She saved Orion Tech, and starting today, I will personally fund her education, her research, and her future." The world exploded with reactions. Universities begged to recruit her. Investors applauded the decision. Critics questioned it. But none of it mattered to Layla, who finally saw a path toward the life she always dreamed of. Yet the story didn't end with fame. Dark forces emerged, rival companies desperate to discredit her, jealous executives whispering conspiracies, even an anonymous threat warning her to stop interfering with billion-dollar ecosystems. Layla grew anxious, but Alexander protected her fiercely, assigning security, legal teams, and analysts to uncover who was trying to sabotage her future. Eventually, a major competitor was exposed, leading to a scandal that shook the tech world. Through it all, Layla remained calm, brilliant, and determined. She returned to Orion Tech regularly to shadow engineers, learn advanced systems, and develop her own ideas so revolutionary that Alexander soon realized she was not just a prodigy, she was the future. Years later, at just 19, Layla patented a quantum stabilization model used worldwide, becoming one of the youngest innovators in technology history. Evelyn retired comfortably, finally free of the struggles that marked her early life. Alexander became her mentor and friend, publicly crediting her genius as the reason Orion Tech survived its darkest hour. And whenever people asked Layla how she solved the billion-dollar problem that day, she always smiled and said, "I just saw what they overlooked." But deep down, she knew the truth. Brilliance can bloom anywhere, even in the shadows where nobody thinks to look.